All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome. We're going to call on Pastor Mark Tungseth, who's with us this evening, to lead us in our invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Lord God, we thank you today for the blessings that you give to us every day, for the mercies that are new every morning, every afternoon, every evening. And Lord, we come to you tonight when we're also grateful for our government. We thank you for these men and women who are serving in this room, who serve our community. We pray that you would bless them in their authority over us. And we pray that you would cause them to be people of integrity and that they would be serving our community as they serve you and serve in a spirit of honor. We pray that you would continue to lead us in this community to have a quiet and peaceful life, and that we would live in godliness as well as in honesty with each other. I thank you for these civic leaders, and I pray your blessing upon our mayor, Ben, each of the council members who are here. We thank you for them and for the other leaders in our city government. We are grateful for how they serve us, and pray that your blessing would be on them. And Father, we just ask that as they meet tonight, as they discuss various things, that there would be a peaceful sense of community in the discussion, even in the disagreements, if there are those. And we just pray, God, that your blessing would be upon this meeting and upon our community. We thank you for all the other people who serve in our community, our schools, our peace officers, our fire department, the business leaders, the civic organizations. We are grateful for all of them. So we just ask your blessing again on this time we have tonight. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It is 5:30, March 1st, 2021, and I'll call this meeting of the Fergus Falls City Council to order. Roll call.
Fish is absent. Hager.
Here.
Tommy.
Here.
Harper appears to be absent. Thompson.
Here.
Ferguson.
Here.
Jefferson.
Here.
And Hicks is, I believe, also absent.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. So we do have a quorum. For those joining via Zoom, I see there's a number of people. Just remind you that we'll keep your microphones muted. If you do wish to participate, just use the raise your hand function, and Claire will do her best to notify me if someone is trying to participate in the conversation. With that, first item of business this evening is the approval of the agenda, and I'll call on our city administrator, Andrew Bremseth. Good evening, Andrew.
Good evening, Your Honor, council members, community members. There are no changes to the agenda this evening, so we are proposing that it be approved as presented.
Thank you, Andrew. With that, I would entertain a motion accepting the agenda as presented. Thank you, Brent. Thank you, Caroline. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. There are no public hearings this evening, there are no bids to award, and there are no petitions and communications. Item G is the consent agenda. There are 4 items that are included in your packet under the consent agenda. If anyone of the council would like to speak to any of them individually. Scott?
I'd like to pull number 2.
Item number 2, Scott's going to pull. Anyone else? Seeing no more, we would then entertain a resolution approving the other remaining 3 items.
So moved.
Thank you, Scott.
I'll second.
Thank you, Krista. Roll call, please.
Hager.
Yes.
Tommy.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Ferguson.
Yes.
Jefferson.
Yes.
Hicks.
Yes.
That resolution is approved. Item number 2 is the licenses. You have a question on one of the licenses or multiple?
One of the licenses being presented is for an excavator license for Consolidated Communications Enterprise Services Incorporated. And I'm not familiar with that company, and so I was asking the question as to just find out who they were, where they're from.
Sure. Andrew, would you like to respond to Councilmember Kwame's
Yeah, thank you,
question?
Your Honor. I would like to, Councilmember Kwame, Consolidated Communications Enterprises Services, Inc. is an excavation company based out of Mankato. They have gotten an excavation permit now from the city for this will be the third year in a row. They perform the excavation work for Great Plains Natural Gas in town. So that's the contractor. They choose to do those services for them. They have done all the necessary paperwork, paid the fees, and everything is in good standing. So should there be a reason to deny them, I guess we should make that clear, but otherwise we would recommend moving forward, and that's who they are.
I wasn't looking for a reason to deny, I was just looking for a background.
Got it.
Maybe somebody else has got a reason, but if not, I move the approval of that.
There's a motion to approve that license.
I'll second.
Second by Caroline. Any further questions?
And the other license as well that was on it, Huron Break.
Yeah, not just that license, the license that were presented, yeah. Thank you for that clarification. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Under ordinance and resolutions, we have a number of them this evening. First item is a first reading of ordinance 11, 8th series, and that's relating to solar energy systems. I know there's a number of people who are here online that would like to speak to that, but first we're going to turn it over to City Planner Darren Welly, who I also believe is joining us via Zoom. Darren, are you there?
I am, thank you.
Good evening, Darren. Go ahead.
Good evening. So the Planning Commission is recommending this ordinance as it is presented. They have gone through the public hearing process on this and reviewed it. And yeah, what you have here is from the Planning Commission recommendation. Are there any questions from the council at this time? Yes.
Anything to add? There's representatives I know from the Planning Commission here. All we're looking to do tonight is to introduce this resolution, then there will be time for discussion and a vote at the March 15th meeting is the way, just so the public's aware. So we introduce if the council wishes to introduce the ordinance this evening, and then they can still make changes to that ordinance before it's voted on March 15th. But with that being said, Andrew?
Yeah, Your Honor, council members, the only thing I'd like to add is just the fact that Darren has spent considerable time, so has City Attorney Nick Lamo, Brian Yavaro, myself, on this ordinance. Darren has researched dozens and dozens of cities and counties and other jurisdictions throughout the state of Minnesota as we work through this process and have incorporated what we feel are things that would be beneficial to have in an ordinance for Fergus Falls. As Darren mentioned, the Planning Commission held a public hearing. We had 2 evenings where the public had the opportunity to participate in that public hearing, and the Planning Commission adopted changes as a result of that public hearing. So just wanted to acknowledge all the time, energy, and work that's gone into that, and appreciation for that work, especially Darren, Rolf, Brian, and others. You know, we learned a lot in a short amount of time, so I just wanted to, on the front end of this thing, thank Darren for his work on that, and look forward to hearing what the public has to say.
Thank you for that, Andrew. So before we look to have this introduced, is there people from the public that would like to make any remarks? Seeing no hands raised that I can see on Zoom. Oh, Katie Tisdall, go ahead. Good evening, Katie.
We gotta unmute her.
Bear with us for once. There you go.
You think I'd have this down by now that we're going on year 2 of living COVID life, but I'd just like to say we also put a lot of thought and hard work into the Ordall Township ordinance, and I think the city's ordinance is still kind of on the lighter side of, as a homeowner, what I would like to see. And I think one of the most important things to me is more of a setback from our residential dwelling. I know the city is looking at adopting some of Stearns County setback with from the property line, and Stearns County is also 200 feet from a dwelling. So I'd like the city council to consider looking at that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. See no other hands raised. Would someone like to introduce this ordinance this evening?
I'll do that, Your Honor.
Thank you, Tom. And again, that's just be introduced tonight. The council will have time to take public comment and then make any corrections, additions to the ordinance before making a final vote on it on March 15th. Yes, Scott,
Can I make just a couple comments?
please do.
I'm not looking to make any changes tonight or any amendments or anything like that. But as I look through the information that I saw, there were three things in particular that I just wanted to at least bring attention to. The first one was under the design standards that were listed in section 154.138D. The question had to do with the distribution and communication lines and whether or not they would be buried or underground. And in this case, I would prefer they would be underground. And I think that the prevailing opinion that was presented even at the Planning Commission requested that that be underground. And to the degree that that would be possible to make that a requirement rather than an option, I'd like to lay that on the table. The second item was under J, security fencing. I just wanted to point out there that the verbiage says it may surround the property. That is, it's not required. And there was some conversations, actually quite a lot of conversations about the security fence, what it would be made of, and whether it was barbed wire or not, and how high, and wildlife and all that. Without getting into those details, I just thought it was interesting, at least, to point out that it's not a required element of the project when it says it may surround it. Frankly, from my point of view, if they choose to put up a security fence or not is up to them. They can take the risk of having it open for people to, wander through or not. But if there's going to be a fence or not, it's optional, the way that this is written. The third item was under M, requiring the screening plan. And this I just wanted to point out to say that there is included in the verbiage screening plan requirement. And so that's not just left as a maybe, but that is definitely a requirement. And I appreciate that. I think that that's something that people were really looking for and desiring. And I think that requiring a screening plan is a very important thing. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Maybe we could ask staff before the final vote on this just to give us the background on the verbiages of the, because there's a couple of instances in there where things are preferred versus required.
Yeah, we can, and if I can speak to that right now,
Sure.
to an
Sure.
extent, that'd be great. One thing you'll note when looking at this ordinance is we're requiring a conditional use permit as part of the ordinance for a solar farm. And the conditional use permit is nice because that's where you can really get specific, site-specific, project by project to say, these are the expectations. So this is where a fence would be required. This is where underground or above ground would be allowed or required. And we wanted to, because we knew we had that conditional use permit in the ordinance, we wanted to get less specific and allow the council and the planning commission in the future to evaluate these on an individual basis, knowing that every site is going to be a little bit different, allowing the ordinance to be user-friendly, easy to understand, and then hone in on those more specific items through the conditional use permit process. So that's the thought behind
Sure.
some of the language of may or may not. And maybe that's encouraging language, but certainly the conditional use permit allows the city to put those conditions and those expectations on any project that were to come forward.
Sure, thanks. Thanks, Andrew. Any other questions from the council? All right, we'll move along. Item number 2 is a resolution accepting the Hoot Lake Solar findings of fact and record of decision for a negative declaration not requiring an environmental impact statement, and we'll call on our city engineer, Brian Ybarro. Good evening, Brian.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Honor, and members of the council. Yes, at last Wednesday's meeting, Council of the Whole, we presented the findings of facts for the Otter Tail Power Solar Project. I just want to make note, we had discussion, and contained in your packet is the environmental assessment worksheet, the findings of the facts, and the record decision, along with the public comments and responses. Please note there's 180 substantive comments that have been responded to, and also our third-party evaluation from Braun Intertech. I'd like to note that representatives from Otter Tail Power's consultant is available virtually, that's HDR, and also Braun Intertech, who's the city's retained as the city's third-party analysis during this whole process. So at this time, I'm requesting a resolution accepting the Hoot Lake Solar Environmental Assessment Worksheet, findings of the facts, and record decision for a negative declaration, that not requiring an environmental impact statement.
Thank you. Brian, I know there's some people who want to speak to this. I know Brian Draxton from Otter Tail Power wants to, but let's maybe, for the sake of the order, let's get a resolution on the floor.
I'll offer that, Your Honor. I'll second it, Your Honor.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Anthony. Okay, so we have a resolution second. We're going to take public comment. Brian, I'll call on Brian Draxton from Otter Tail Power. You want to start us off? Good evening, Brian.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Shire, and council members. My name is Brian Draxton. I'm the manager of resource planning for Otter Tail Power. I'm going to keep my comments very brief, but and we do have some people here to answer technical questions if they come up. And like just to echo what Andrew said, we do really appreciate all the work that the city's done. We realize this is it's been kind of a short process and it's a big learning curve, and we really appreciate all the work. And also, we support your recommendation that the project does not have the potential for significant environmental impacts, and that an EIS is not warranted. We believe that by producing carbon-free energy and utilizing native plantings, that this project will actually create environmental benefits. We recognize the city's action tonight is not for a formal approval of the project. The decision tonight will, however, allow the project to move forward with applying for the necessary permits. While these issues are outside the scope of the EAW, there are just a couple of things I want to address. One especially, it seems like it always comes up, is around that 49.9 megawatts and trying to avoid commission oversight. First of all, the PUC has ordered Otter Tail Power to initiate a process to procure solar energy, and we right now have a filing in front of the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission on this very project. We're not avoiding oversight, and in fact, by staying under the 50 megawatts, we think that we've given the city council and local authorities a chance to have input on the project as opposed to somebody from St. Paul. Finally, we are working with the 8 affected homeowners who potentially could have solar panels within 250 feet of their homes. And while we're not going to share the private individual details that we're doing with each homeowner, we are offering these landowners 3 different options. And we're also giving them up to 1 year after the project is complete to make their decision on which one of those options they want to choose. So we think we've given them a really nice menu of offerings, and we've removed the pressure for them to make a decision early, to be able to wait until they can see what the project looks like before they have to make a decision. So that's my comments for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Anyone else from the audience? Any hands? Clara, I can't see if there's any hands raised.
Tisdall's and Jason Hill.
Okay. Jason Hill, go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah, good evening, Jason. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I was asked by the Howardell Township Board just kind of to briefly address a couple of things. I wanted to go back a little bit. I thought I had raised my hand correctly. Maybe I hadn't earlier with the previous ordinance. I just wanted to reflect some statements that were made by Ms. Tisdall. The Township Board recently adopted a solar ordinance, and as the same with the City Council, put a lot of work into that, and reviewed similar ordinances, and would recommend, particularly with regard to setbacks and the buried lines, something that's a little bit closer to the township's ordinance. So it just kind of reflects some of the comments that were made earlier. With regard to the resolution, the current resolution, and the negative declaration, the township board had some significant concerns about the process here, particularly with regard to the identification of the RGU. Under the rules, if there's more than one entity that's involved, there's a there's a process there, there's the rules that are in place. And I understand the city's concern is that in the future, they may annex some of this property that's in Ourdahl and in Buse Township. But that isn't the case now. And the proposal that's before all of these entities, the city of Fergus Falls, Buse Township, and Ourdale Township, includes land in all three of those jurisdictions. It's not all in the city as of yet. So I think it would have been appropriate for Ourdale Township and Buse Township to be at least involved in that discussion about the determination of the RGU. And I think that, the township's board wanted me to express that. And, for this particular instance and going forward as well, that we have, good communications on those types of issues and the concern about that, the appropriateness of that standard of, in the future, we might own it, but it's not owned now. Or it might be annexed. It hasn't been annexed. And the language of the rule is fairly clear as far as who should be involved in that process. So that's all I wanted to add on the process part of it. I don't have any input on the substance of the EAW or the work that's been done by the city or Braun or anybody else. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Jason. Katie Tisdall? Go ahead, Katie.
I just had a question about just kind of the threshold for the margin of error with the EAW. I know it's a preliminary process and there's more steps to the permitting. However, in the EAW, I believe the solar panels are said to be 10 feet tall, but Untitled Power feels strongly about 20 feet tall in the solar ordinance. So I just think some transparency as to what that's going to look like, because a solar panel that could be twice as tall, in my eyes, might have more of an impact. So I just wanted to ask for more clarification about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
You could ask Untitled to respond to that if you think it's appropriate.
Is there any, you guys have any response? I mean, and don't feel obligated. I don't know the answer to the question, so if someone does, help me out.
Randy Sinselin with Otter Power, working as the project lead for the Hoot Lake Solar Project. With regard to the heights of the panels, we haven't secured all of the equipment at this point, and with the solar industry providing flexibility on that will be in the best interest of our customer. But at the time that we come in front for the conditional use permit, that's when those details would be much more clearly laid out. Okay. And so providing flexibility with the ordinance is an important part of that process. But you certainly will see that in the conditional use permit process.
Okay. Thank you, Randy. Barbara Finseth, go ahead, Barbara.
Yes, I just had a question. At the Planning Commission, there was some mention of the compensation to homeowners that are affected, and there was some mention of it tonight. Ourdale Township ordinances have a requirement in it that the utility reach an agreement with the homeowners before they were to get their permit. Does the city have anything like that in their ordinances? I think it's important to protect the homeowners.
Are we going back to the ordinance discussion?
Evidently.
Rolf, do you want to?
The ordinance doesn't require a communication or an agreement between the permittee and the neighbor. I'm not sure what that would look like, other than you wouldn't basically be allowed to have any permitted use without consent of neighbors, written consent. So if that's what you're contemplating, I don't think that's what the ordinance doesn't provide that, nor would we normally have that type of provision, a veto provision in an ordinance with a conditional use permit.
Yeah, okay, thanks. And I guess we can have more thought on that, or maybe look at that before the final vote, but my initial thought would be if one person were able to stop an entire project, for that, I would see some real problems with that. But maybe we'll take a look at what Oradell Township has in theirs, and at least, I guess we can consider whatever we want to consider. But any other questions from the public before we vote on the resolutions on the floor? Seeing none? Oh, go ahead, Terry. Good evening, Terry. Didn't see your hand raised there.
That's okay. Hello, council and mayor and staff. I guess I have a bit of concern about the process of which you've gone about this, and whether the council understands the differences between an EAW and an EIS and how that is gone about, and just how you've been educated about the process, and whether you're, I don't know quite how to say this, but I think that you need to look at the details of what even Braun says, where they feel as if things aren't adequately addressed, and think about those in terms of the ordinance and this petition. And I think you just need to look carefully and think about things. And I question the process of how the whole thing was done, as far as determining who the responsible government unit was. And I did not see where that was addressed at any city council meeting, and some of those other things. And I just think you should slow down and do a really good job. So that's probably my biggest concern, is that you're not looking at the details. And I understand now that with the conditional use permit, that will be an opportunity to do that. That's a little comforting, but it's like there's been a lot of comments to date that I don't feel have been adequately addressed. And thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Yep. Megan Beckler, go ahead, Megan.
Hey, I just have a couple of questions. My biggest one is, I'm curious about the conditional use permit, and I appreciate that process and that you guys can really tailor the ordinance to meet the needs of a specific project. I am curious how often that ordinances are actually made more restrictive with something like that. Like typically, I guess I would think that, often people ask for a variance, and that's usually to make something less restrictive. So I'm kind of curious why we wouldn't choose something a little bit more restrictive, especially like between a residential home and the project, and then also some of the screening requirements that kind of seem optional, depending on where you put the screening with the fence. There's a lot of, really, when you think about how close some of those are allowed, it's very close. I mean, you're talking about maybe 15 yards away on some of these things, and maybe 50 yards at most, which is really not that far when you're considering, like, hey, I built my dream home here, and now I am surrounded by a solar farm. So, I mean, I guess I'm just thinking, like, at what point, why couldn't we say, hey, maybe we should make this a little more restrictive? If Otter Tail wants to come back and say, hey, we would like a variance, then you could look at that. I don't know. That's just kind of my thought, is like, I'm curious if you guys have specific examples where in the city you have made something more restrictive on a conditional use permit.
Well, signs.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Signs would be the one that would come to mind, right?
Yeah, Your Honor, we're beyond the ordinance discussion, but I guess I'll entertain that. There's a few examples. One, like you just mentioned, signs. Also related to home occupation businesses, we restrict hours of operation for folks, which otherwise wouldn't be restricted in other parts of the ordinance. So there's many examples where you would be more restrictive. The burden on a variance, there's a strict burden, and that's placed through state statute on 3 factors. And in this case, to find a uniqueness for a property that's contemplated in a variance approval would be really challenging to do when you're talking about large-scale solar farms or solar farms in general. So it's absolutely the appropriate mechanism to use a conditional use, and that's what Darren found through his research, that just about every, if not every, community has the conditional use permit process. to address those things, so.
Thanks. Thank you for that, Andrew. I think I saw one other hand. I couldn't read the name, though. Is there still a hand raised?
The hand is down, but it's Karen.
I'm getting sick.
I think they've taken their.
Okay. All right. So seeing no other hands from the public, if there's no further questions from the council, roll call, please.
Piper.
Yes.
Gordon.
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Arneson.
Yes.
Gustafson.
Yes.
Hicks.
Yes.
Resolution is approved. Item number 3 is a resolution ordering the plans and specifications and the authorization of advertisement of bids for the public improvement 9768, the downtown riverfront project. We'll call on our city engineer, Brian Yvarro.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor, again, and members. This is, your memo before you is in regards to public improvement 9768. This is a downtown river balcony and riverbank enhancement and stabilization project. Basically improvement to the west parking lot that's bounded between Union Avenue and Court Street. The city's consultant, Bolton Mink, has substantially completed the project plans and specifications. The estimated construction cost for this project is $2,550,000. Because of this, we must publicly advertise for bids for a minimum of 21 days. I do not have the exact bidding schedule established at this time. However, I anticipate a bid opening in early April. We're also proposing to accept all bids virtually, electronically in a public setting. Just want to note a few key features, and I got some slides to go through here just to give you a little bit more detail about this project. But number 1 is removal of the west parking lot, excavation, replacement with a new parking configuration. This is proposed to be done in phases to maintain use of this parking lot during construction to the maximum extent practical. We have to do some utility extension work. This main feature is this new park marketplace structure with bathroom facilities. Like I said, I'll go over more detail. We have a few alternates associated with this project. The surfacing is going to consist of decorative reinforced concrete surface that will consist of the plaza and the trail itself. We have a river overlook, decorative lights in conjunction with Otter Tail Power. We have some street utility work for Court Street, stimulating from Court Street that we need to extend into this new facility. We're also proposing to do some improved, enhanced pedestrian crossing at this intersection. We also have some vegetative enhancements, kiosks, signed archways, and various other amenities. So at this time, I just want to turn it over here. If I'm looking at the screen here to the north, up here, right now you're seeing the title page for the project. Usually include this. Next slide, please, Claire. This right here is just a layout. I just want to illustrate this. If you're watching my pointer here, if you can follow here right now, this dashed line around here. This is illustrating the project limits right now for the west parking lot. This is the action before you. The main amenity work will be here on the south side. We're going to replace the entire parking lot. Number 1, that's due to topography, and the other reason is to install some islands for some new service drops for Otter Tail Power's realignment of their work. This solid hatched area, this is a separate project. This is a state aid project, Public Improvement 5333. This is also will be coming before you, but it is separate from the action before you right now. And we also have this area to the east of Court. That is the next phase of this entire project. Next slide, please. This is just a plan view of the plaza area. Union up here going north and south. River kind of runs west-east here southerly. This is just kind of showing you some enhancements, the decorative concrete, some layouts. This banded area right here, this is the Central Lakes, or the regional trail system that will also be concrete. This is a overlook area. Next slide, please. This right here is the same type of setup that we're looking at from the west. This is just going further to the east. This is now 4th Street. We're showing some of the nodes and the enhanced crossing of Court Street right here for this regional trail. Next slide, please. This right here, this is a 3 rendering once of the plaza area. This is an illustration of what the marketplace structure is proposed to look like. This is overlaid above the previous slides we had here with the decorative concrete. Next slide. This is a side view. This is looking to the northwest. This is kind of the trail system right along here, and you'd be looking into the structure at this time. Another slide, please. This is pretty much looking at Union to the northeast. I want to note two features here that's kind of showing. Number one, these glass garage walls, garage doors, they're retractable, fold up and everything to help with more of a three-season wind barrier type of effect. And it's really hard to see here as well, but these are coal-ray-vac heaters that we're also proposing on natural gas to help too with add a little bit during the early spring, late fall type events that might take place in this market structure, just to get more year-round use. I want to note these features, these glass doors and these heaters are bid as alternates in the entire project. Next slide, please. This is looking to the south. You can have a little more detail of the wind barriers, the glass doors that we're referring to. Next slide. And this is more of an interior view. And one more slide, please. Let's go back approximately 2 slides. I just want to point out one back more. Maybe one more. Okay, that will be just fine right there. This structure right here, this is going to be the public bathroom setting. We'll have access off of the east side of the structure. This enclosed structure also has a storage room that will house the utility services coming into this building, and along with storage for perhaps tables, things of that nature that could be associated with the marketplace or whatever venue is going to be this marketplace is serving at this time. So that's just a few of presenting what you're looking to bid on here. I just want to note we have extensive pole relocations. We've had a lot of dialogue with Otter Tail Power to make these relocations. Otter Tail Power is committed to start these relocations contingent on how the city proceeds. One other additional item is we have a shoreline variance that was issued in March of 2020. This is valid for 1 year due to various reasons this past year. We had to postpone this. We're also requesting a 2-year extension of this request. Once we get actual bids, prices, we'll come back to the council with the pending award and the sources and uses for this project. So at this time, council, I'm requesting three items to accept the project plans and specifications. I'm also requesting authorization to advertise for bids and to grant the shoreline variance extension of 2 years for this project.
Thank you, Brian. I think
I'll
we'll do
open up
that.
for any questions.
Yeah, we'll do that with 2 resolutions. The first one will be to accept the plans and then to order the authorization of bids. Item 3 on our agenda for public meeting.
I'd like to offer that resolution and then offer an amendment, please.
Sure, you bet. So we have a resolution. Someone like to second that?
I'll second it, I guess.
Yeah, Justin, go ahead. Yes, Scott.
I had spoken with Brian earlier about this, and just wanted to make it clear in the notes, so to speak, that there would also be vendor utility hookups provided as an alternate in the planning as this goes to bid, so that there would be an option for vendors to hook up their water hoses, power cords and whatnot without having to have cords and hoses running all over the place. And although that may not be a part of what's already been sketched out, I think that to have that added as an alternate, as the plans are developed for bid, should be possible, if I understood you correctly.
Yes. Thank you, Scott. We'll look at that and we spoke about that. I think at a minimum, we can insert as an alternate just for the hookups themselves for electrical and water service. I wholeheartedly agree. The more flexibility you can bring to design, that's great. It's just a matter of then how that would be distributed for a particular venue. But at a minimum, we can have those connection points. And I figured we better serve in that marketplace structure that would house and protect those utility connections right in there. So
Sure.
that is something we could integrate as an alternate.
So, okay, so, well, you're okay with amending that? So, with Scott's suggestion, I think that's a good idea. Thank you for that, Scott. Other questions?
Your Honor.
Yeah, Anthony?
So what's the timeline on this $2.5 million is presumably just for the west parking lot? So are we not going ahead with the east parking lot?
if it could, excuse me, on the just the west, yes, if we could turn it back to, I believe, the second slide,
Yeah.
please, Clara.
So we're just literally talking about the west, but what's the plans for the east?
The east parking lot is still under development. We have some preliminary designs, but we held off on that project for, the primary reason was logistics. We're trying to maintain traffic operations for use. We're maintaining parking in both the west and east lot. Understanding the majority of the construction is along the riverbank. Want to restrict any construction work farther to the north in the west parking lot until to maintain use. I prefer having a staging area for any materials, equipment in the east parking lot to provide access during construction for this part. So it would be very tough in logistics if we were to build both these improvements in the same season.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions, comments? Roll call, please.
Hafer.
Yes.
Klein.
Yes.
Hofer.
Yes.
Munson.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Gustafson.
Yes.
Hicks.
Yes.
That resolution is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And you already described the extension of the variance that you're requesting for the shoreline, so would someone, if there's any questions on it, otherwise, would someone like to offer that?
I'll offer that.
Thank you, Caroline.
I'll second.
Thank you, Krista. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Hafer.
Yes.
Klein.
Yes.
Hofer.
Yes.
Munson.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Gustafson.
Yes.
Hicks.
No. Sorry, yes.
So used to that.
It's like a reflex.
That resolution's approved. Oh, fun.
Tough crowd tonight.
Item number 5 is a resolution to support the authority to impose a local sales tax to fund specific capital improvement funding projects, and I will call on our city administrator, Andrew Bremson.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor members. I think Councilmember Hicks is saving up his nose for my 2 items here, and, and that's maybe okay. But before you this evening is an amendment to a resolution we approved back in January. In working with Representative Jordan Rasmussen, we have received feedback from him that the 3 projects that we sent forward prior through our sales tax request were a little big for what the legislature wants to look at. We've kind of joked over the last few weeks that the legislature's stomach is probably, their eyes are bigger than their stomach when they created the rules to allow for cities to bring up to 5 projects forward. So the feedback has been loud and clear from legislators that we need to consolidate our request a little more and also look at trimming the potential number of years that this sales tax would be in place should these projects be successful. So at a city council work session last week, we discussed this, and the council consensus was to remove item number 2 from that original resolution, which is a trails project. That trails project consisted of segments of the Glacial Edge Trail, rehabilitation of existing Riverwalk pavers on the south side of the river, Stanton Avenue streetscapes, and then the old smoky renaissance of the ski hill down by the landfill. So we're proposing that we remove that $2.5 million project out of the sales tax request altogether. And the impact that has, excuse me, is taking it down from a potential of 16 years to 13 years. Should both remaining projects, the D Lagoon and the Aquatic Center, be successful. It would reduce the amount that would be generated from 21 million down to 17,700,000, which is a $3.3 million difference. And finally, I guess that really covers the differences between the two. I do want to note the Aquatic Center project is 7.8 million. The D Lagoon Improvement Project, which includes upgrades to the campground, ball fields, the lighting in the complex, extending utilities to all those places, is 5.2 million. But what you'll see in this resolution is a higher number than that, because that includes the bonding issuance costs, interest on the bonds, and all of those other things. So for the Aquatic Center, we'd be looking at collecting 10.6 million total, and for the D Lagoon, it would be 7.1 total. Again, if both of those were approved by the legislature and then by the local citizens at the general election in 2022, we would be looking at a potential of 13 years of sales tax. The last thing I'll note is we've used very conservative numbers within this resolution to ensure that adequate proceeds would be collected should we have a downturn or should we have some tough years. So this is, I would say, the longest or worst case scenario should this proceed. So I think you would see something different if we actually had these things come to fruition, but have to play it safe and build some cushion in there to give the folks that would potentially bond or buy the bonds some comfort level that we'd collect adequate revenue. So if the council's in support of this, we're just looking at a resolution or basically amending the previous resolution, and then we'll submit these back to the legislature tomorrow, and we actually have a hearing before the committee on Wednesday that a few of our council members are going to represent us on. So things are moving right along, but this is a procedural step to further comply with the feedback we're hearing from our legislators.
Thank you, Andrew, and thanks to the work with the legislative committee on that as well. Someone like to offer that? Tom?
I'll second it.
Justin, thanks. And then just to reiterate a fourth time or a fifth time, this is setting the stage for legislative approval. This would still have to go before the voters. I mean, that's the key. Both of these projects independently would have to go before the voters before they would, before the council would have the ability to move forward. So just make sure the public is very clear on that. What we're authorizing today is a resolution asking for legislative support so that we can bring this to the voters in November of 2022. Questions, comments from the council?
There is one thing. This has identified 3 projects, and obviously there's only
Sure. So just change it from 2 to 3.
We'll change
Or from
that
3 to 2.
before we
I
send
should
it
say.
in.
Good catch.
Good catch.
Good catch, Anthony. Roll call, please.
Hayward,
Yes.
Fleming,
Yes.
Rupert.
Yes.
Huntington,
Yes.
Ferguson,
Yes.
Hutchison,
Yes.
Hicks.
No. There's a real no this time.
That resolution is approved. Item number 6 is a resolution authorizing the mayor and city administrator to execute a space lease agreement with Fergus Falls Lodging LLC for the Bigwood Event Center space.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. Members, I will discuss that, and then I'd like to have a broader discussion about the Bigwood Event Center after that resolution's acted on, if that's okay. For a little background, in 2020, we were informed that Ruhr Development intended to not renew the agreement to operate the city-owned Bigwood Event Center. Since that time, we've done a lot of work in looking at a transition for that facility, and now we currently are actually operating the event center. There is a few vaccination clinics that are operating out of the space, but we're not currently hosting public meetings, though the keys have more or less been turned over to the city at this stage. And as part of that transition, we have been working closely with Fergus Falls Lodging LLC, which is the hotel ownership, on a space lease, which is before you this evening. And essentially what this space lease will do is allow them to keep their hotel lobby and check-in desk in the same place that it is today, which is all within the city's footprint of the Bigwood Event Center. What we're proposing in this space lease is that in return for being able to continue to operate that space as is, they would take care of all of the snow removal, lawn care, lawn maintenance, and also the maintenance and cleaning of the public restrooms that are within the city's footprint. So we see this as a win-win for both parties. Essentially, we don't have to provide the personnel and the manpower to align those duties with our current work, and they get to continue to operate as is, which I think is really a good thing for everybody. That's pretty straightforward what the lease looks like. We're proposing a 1-year lease, and then it would be a month-to-month lease going forward with a 60-day notice requirement from either party should they wish to terminate that. The other thing I wanted to note is part of this agreement, the development company would be responsible for continuing or still paying the city all past due amounts related to their operation of the event center. There is some outstanding balances, and we would ensure that those are made whole to the city as part of having this agreement in place. So that's really the high level space lease that we're working on. There is one other thing that's going to be shared space, that's a computer room on the event center side where their technology is housed. The city's technology will also be housed in that same space. So we're giving them the ability to continue to operate out of that space. We think that's only fair and makes sense as we continue to work in close partnership with them moving forward. So I would ask for a resolution approving this space lease and allowing us to sign it. And then, Your Honor, if I could continue to talk about the Bigwood Event Center, I would appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you, Andrew. Would someone like to offer that resolution?
Make them.
Thank you, Brent. Thank you, Scott. Any questions for Andrew? Roll call, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
That resolution is approved. All right, continue. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank
Andrew.
you, Your Honor. Council members, I would be remiss if I didn't just quickly thank Mike Trudeau and folks out at Fergus Falls Lodging. They've been very cooperative, and I've appreciated the partnership through the transition. They have been much more cooperative than they would have had to have been. And also, I want to acknowledge Jean Bowman, who's worked hand in hand with the city and the event center to help with this smooth transition. She's been very helpful, and I count on the fact that that'll continue to be the case as we move forward. So city staff continues to work under the assumption that we as a city will be operating and staffing this event center going forward starting in 2022. And I'm here tonight to ask if that assumption is correct, or if you want us to kind of hit the brakes on that. We are hoping, or we're laying out plans for what that might look like, including budgets, staffing levels, and those things in preparation for that. I will say that since the city took over the event center again recently, we've started getting the calls, and this is where I really thank Jean. She's been the point person for all that. I mentioned the other day that the few days that those calls were coming to me, I think I had more calls about people looking for space than anything else to do with the city. So very thankful that Jean was willing to take that on, and the calls continue to come in. So it's, it shows that there's, one, a comfort level with folks getting back out and doing these things, and two, that there's a demand or a need for space like this in town. So that's why we work under the assumption that we're going to operate this thing come 2021, that the event center is important to the community and the space is a need for the community. And should the council want us to do something different, I hope for that guidance and feedback. Otherwise, we're going to continue down that road. We would build a budget for it with the 2022 budget process, and I envision that the end of quarter three, beginning of quarter four, we would hire a manager for the facility to begin ramping up the activities related to opening the doors in 2022, getting the word out there about the opportunity, scheduling events, figuring out staffing, all of those different promotional things that go with that. So looking for your feedback on that, and if we should continue down that road, or if we're looking to do something else.
Yeah, I mean, I think my thoughts are, I think it's demonstrated that there's a need for that facility in our community. I don't think there's any question. So until we find an operator that wants to take that on and feels like they can do that, then I think it's the city. I think we need to put a budget together and bring it back to the council and move forward as staff is doing that. That's my thoughts.
Maybe a motion to that effect, Your Honor, would be helpful. And then I don't know if Jean wants to add anything to what I said, or I'm putting her on the spot, of course, but maybe in terms of the demand and some of the calls you're receiving, that might be helpful.
Good evening, Jean.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The phone just rings. Today I had 3 calls, and just to give you a sense of the type of call, today we had somebody looking for a wedding reception venue. We have the Morning Kiwanis Club that's looking for a place to meet, because in our community, the Lake Region Healthcare meeting rooms and the YMCA community room and the Alt Event Center are not taking any events, so our local people need spaces. And then we have the Minnesota National Association of Retired and Federal Employees looking for a place for 2023. That bid was due today, so we had to respectfully decline to submit a bid, but we asked them to keep us on the list for 2025. So all sorts of different groups looking for a place to host convention and events, and the all-school reunion. I am keeping a master list for 2022. There are about 8 events on there already, and 2 brides want the same weekend in June. So, I don't have a crystal ball for what post-COVID meetings will be like, but in Q4, they're anticipating people are going to start rebooking for next year. So I'm hopeful that this can continue to be a facility that's an asset for our residents and visitors. Any specific questions?
Thanks, Gene. Would someone like to offer a motion
If
that
not-
we have staff continue that direction? And of course, they bring it back with the budgets and the plans and everything else. But Tom and Scott, did you second that? Yep. Any questions for Gene or Andrew? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Under presentation of claims, tonight we have claims in the amount of $1,124,597.79. And if there's any questions, we will direct them to our finance director, Bill Sommer. And I think we got one from Scott Kwame.
Yeah.
Ongoing continuing education.
No, well, this one's pretty simple. In the resolution record tonight is an item for $1,244 from the liquor store payable to Indigo Signworks. That's
Sure.
That's where I work.
Sure.
So just in the interest of disclosure, pointing that out, I wrote the order, but I'm certainly not going to live on what that will provide, but it was part of our business.
Thanks for pointing that out, Scott. Any other questions? If not, would someone like to offer that resolution?
I will offer that we pay the bills.
Thank you, Krista. Second, Tom?
Second.
Thank you, sir. Roll call, please.
Hager.
Yes.
Kwame.
Yes.
Hooper.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Ernst.
Yes.
Gustafson.
Yes.
Yes.
That resolution is approved. There are no board, committee, department reports, or reports from staff or administrative officers. Under old unfinished business, we have an update on the airport manager discussion, and I'll call on Councilmember Justin Arneson to kick that discussion off.
So just to follow up from our last council meeting, I made the motion that we hit pause on this and reconvene a working group. And so tonight I would make a motion for that working group to consist of city staff Brian Yavaro, our engineer, Mike Hartwell, the HR director, myself, Krista Hagberg, and then I would look to the Airport Advisory Board to come up with 2 members they'd like to represent. The intent would be to meet as soon as possible to look at next steps and direction, and then come back before the council on March 15th's meeting, assuming we can get that meeting done in time with an update as far as the next steps that subcommittee would recommend.
Thank you. Justin? So someone like to second that, and then we have, if anyone has any discussion?
I'll second that, Your Honor.
Thank you, Caroline. Any questions, comments from the council? All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. So we look forward to that update on March 15th. Thank you, Justin. There is no new business this evening. Under miscellaneous announcements, I have one. And it's written in really, really tiny handwriting, so I'm going to see if I can read it. It says, the next several sessions of the Kids Book Bunch at the Fergus Falls Public Library are special for Earth Day. So follow along as Miss Ariel reads Never Say Die by Will Hibbs. Free copies of this book are available at the library. You can get them, you can call the library, or you can visit their Facebook or their website. And we'd like to say thank you to the Citizens Climate Lobby, the local Citizens Climate Lobby, for sponsoring this event for our Kids Book Bunch for Earth Day. So with that, if there's nothing else to come before the council, we're adjourned.